Wash your hands. Hi, welcome to another episode of Unlocking the Mind Behind Make More, Work Less. My name is Fong. I'm an entrepreneur, business strategist, real estate investor, speaker, and also a best-selling author. And every single day, I help others unlock the potentials and guide them to succeed. Today on Unlocking the Mind, we talk about another cognitive bias. And the reason why I have this show is so we can better understand how our minds work, make better decisions, build stronger relationships, and of course, avoid certain cognitive traps. So for today's cognitive bias, let me ask you a question. Have you ever thought that there was a time where washing your hands was not common? Today, you probably go, you know what? Washing your hands is something you have to do. But there was one point in time in history where people didn't think washing your hands actually did anything. But now, washing your hands actually saves a lot of lives. Now, have you ever heard of a statement or some evidence or a proof from somebody and says, hey, you know what? This is this, and this. And you go, I don't believe you at all. I completely reject your conclusions. Have you rejected people's conclusion without really looking at evidence? I'm sure we all have. We're all victims of it. So what does one thing have to do with another? What does rejecting some evidence and proof have to do with washing your hands? Well, that all leads up to the Semmelweis Reflex. So what exactly is that? This is the reflex-like tendency that we all reject new evidence or new knowledge because it contradicts established norms, beliefs, or paradigms. So we as human beings, we like to protect what we know. If things have gone through many years of experience or many years of testing, we tend to go, you know what, they've done their work, they've done their research, they must know what they're doing, we're going to protect that. And any new evidence that contradicts that, we tend to go, you know what, I think you're wrong, you need to go back and check your evidence, we don't believe that you know what you're doing, and we just kind of support the past history evidence, we support what's been the norm for all these years. And that's what we tend to like to do. We like to protect the stuff that we've been comfortable with. And because our minds don't like new things, when we're challenged with new things, we feel like, that's scary or that's risky. And therefore new evidence, even though if the evidence was concrete and evidence was very supportive of the new ideas or the new statements, we tend to go, you know what, you need to go check it again because that's not how things are done. So what does one thing have to do with another? Well, way back in the 1800s, when doctors was just starting to discover how to diagnose people's deaths or finding out how people died, they actually opened up cadavers and they were studying the body and all that kind of stuff. But at that period of time, they actually had no idea about germs and bacteria and all that kind of stuff. It was way back. This is 1800s. So they were actually experimenting on, okay, well, this is the reason why this person died. This is the reason why this person died. Well, at that period of time, this one person actually came up going, hey, you guys have to wash your hands before you go back to your clinic, or you have to wash your hands before you go back to your hospital. After you finish opening up a cadaver, you have to wash your hands. And that comment, you may think is kind of common sense, but at that time, all the doctors, all the expertise, all the people who knows what they're doing say, that's preposterous. We don't need to wash our hands. Why would we have to do something like that? We've been doing this all this time. We haven't needed to wash our hands and nothing's wrong happened. So they completely rejected that person. Well, that person was Ignaz Semmelweis. He is a Hungarian physician who's not a doctor, but he was the person who actually came up with the concept of washing your hands. Without him, people would not be doing it to this day, maybe. We have a lot of thanks to give to Semmelweis because he came up with that concept that we have to wash our hands because there's these little monsters that was coined at a time that are bacteria and diseases that can be transferred from one person to another if we're not careful. So therefore, we have to wash our hands. What happened at that time was there was a lot of mothers who passed away giving birth, and they didn't understand why. There was actually two clinics. One clinic had a lot of mothers passing away and another one that did not have as much. And they didn't understand why one had more than the other. In fact, what happened so much that so many expensive mothers would say, hey, I want to go to the second clinic because that first clinic, lots of mothers died. So they didn't understand why. But they just continued on with how things are and they just go, this is the way it is, and they can't explain it. But Semmelweis wanted to do some more research. He then discovered that the first clinic actually had a lot more doctors performing the birth procedure than in the second clinic, where midwives were doing it and students were doing it, whereas the doctors were mainly in the first clinic. And he didn't understand why until he made this connection where the first clinic actually did a lot more research in opening up cadavers and researching on death and all that kind of stuff. And what he found out was the doctors who were doing all these experiments and opening up cadavers were not washing their hands going from the cadaver going and then helping with childbirth. And because of that, it transferred diseases, and that's why more mothers died throughout that procedure. So then he goes, you know what, we have to wash our hands. So he goes and tells everybody, we need to wash our hands. We need to wash our hands. We have to do that before we go to the other thing. And nobody believed him. All these doctors were completely saying, hey, we're the experts here. You're not a doctor. You're wrong. You need to go back and do your research. There's no such things as these little monsters and all that kind of stuff. So they completely rejected him. After a while, they went so far to actually put him into a mental institute because he went so far to telling everybody, hey, you have to wash your hands, you have to wash your hands, you have to wash your hands, regardless of how much evidence he had. He, in fact, had certain clinics wash their hands and people doing that procedure to wash their hands. So, and they found out that more and more people survived, but still, doctors didn't believe it. And to shut him up, they basically admitted him into a mental institute where eventually he passed away. Years later, they actually found out, oh, by the way, he was actually right. There are things called bacteria. There are things like diseases that get transferred from blood to blood if you don't wash your hands. So therefore, you have to wash your hands. And then they go, oh, okay, now we have to do it. So that is the Semmelweis reflex. It's where people just disregard the ideas and new evidence just because of how things work. Now, how do we avoid that? Well, the thing is, we need to start looking at evidence and with an open mind. We have to look at facts with an open mind so that we do not just follow suit with what we're doing all this period of time. So what we can do is when we're looking at facts and evidence, give it that time of day and give it that benefit of the doubt. Make sure you do your research, make sure you give them a chance to present their research, and then really have a good discussion about it. But once you start talking about, well, I believe this, well, we've been doing it this way for so long, or you start taking emotional impacts into it, then you're rejecting it for the wrong reason. Then you're really just going with the Semmelweis reflex and just rejecting things for no reason at all, even if the evidence is there. So that is the Semmelweis effect or reflex. And if you like this episode, please go back and watch some of my other episodes on unlocking the mind. And if you like this show, we have a lot of other shows, the Make More Mind Bites, the Master Mind Bites, and of course the Peak Potential Success Show that's up every single week. So until next time, remember to wash your hands. Thank you very much for your likes, subscriptions, and your comments. I love seeing those comments. And until next time, today is the day to lock your peak potential. I'll see you later.